Welcome back. I'm Shane and this is Relative Time. And 2019 is now firmly behind us. So it's time to take a look back at the top watches for the year. And last year I did a top 5 list, but this year I had a lot harder time just narrowing it down. So instead this is a top 10. But just like last year, these are all watches that I covered on the channel. And they're not necessarily the best watches that I looked at last year, merely the ones that made the biggest and the longest lasting impression on me. At number 10, we have one of the more unusual watches from last year, and I was originally calling it the Vostok Full Moon Amphibia, although these days I'm actually calling it the Ghost Amphibia. And it's actually become one of my favorites just from kind of the sheer oddity of it. Now Vostoks or Amphibias aren't unusual for a watch channel, but what is unusual is a fully loomed Vostok. Moreover, a fully loomed Vostok with a 24-hour dial and movement. And that's exactly what we have here. All of which is thrown into Vostok's 420 case, which is only 39mm wide. And this gives you a pretty inexpensive, but pretty capable diver with just a really unique look, both in the day and the night. Coming in at number 9, we have a recent review that I'm still not sure I'm pronouncing correctly, and that's the Matthew & Sons Irukandji. Whether it's intentional or not, for me I kind of see this as a spiritual successor to the Seiko bottle cap, as they do share a similar case shape, but Matthew & Sons then takes that and then just really further refines it to the point that it has its own unique look and style. It's really a rather risky design, and the safer choice would have just been to make another subby homage. And this is something I really appreciate here, as it designs something that is more individualistic, rather than something that's more generic that would have mass appeal. It's not perfect, but in some ways what I think Matthew & Sons did here really represents the ideal of what microbrands can do with their designs. And I hope their success on Kickstarter really encourages others to put faith in their own ideas and maybe follow a different path, to really focus on making a watch that they think would be great, not just a great selling watch. A good design is really only half the battle for a microbrand. The other half is the execution and the quality that results from it. And that is where number 8 on this list comes in, with the Swiss watch company's Diver, which still needs a better name. It's just really hard to beat the quality of the watch you're getting here for the price. And they did recently raise the price just a little bit, but that's because it now comes with a fully adjustable buckle, something I do plan to pick up sooner than later. Regardless, this is really a watch that I come back to time and time again, and it's one that I've really appreciated more since I've owned it. I actually didn't wear this watch for a couple of months, but I started again right at the beginning of December, and a couple of things struck me right off the bat. The first thing is that I'd forgotten just how comfortable this watch is, which is a little surprising because it is a larger watch. Putting it on, it was just kind of like hanging out with an old friend and just remembering how much fun you used to have. The second thing is that since that review, I've actually been wearing more watches in this price range and above. And I just don't think I gave the Swiss watch company's Diver enough credit in that review for its quality. They really did a great job here and give you a well-spec'd Swiss-made watch for the price. Not to mention, it really has some of the best lume I've ever seen. So, you say you want a GMT with some true history and heritage, yet you don't want to sell a kidney in order to afford it? Well, number 7 is your answer, with the Glycine Airman, which actually predates its Rolex counterpart by about a year. While its origin story might not be as glamorous, this highly functional GMT really became a favorite among pilots, both military and civilian. Which is why it really has more of a military feel to it, just putting more emphasis on functionality than, say, some of its subby friends. Which is also where one of the downsides really comes in, as there is a bit of a learning curve to using a 24-hour dial. But the Airman's really become my standard as to what I compare a great travel watch to. This might not be the GMT if you're traveling across the globe to go to a board meeting, but it's a great choice if you're traveling across the globe, or even just down the street, for some kind of adventure, one where you're not really sure what to expect. This particular one has 200 meters of water resistance and is just a tad over 11 millimeters tall, which means no matter where you go or what weather or climate you have to face, this is really a watch that can go with you, which is a concept that really some other GMTs haven't quite grasped. At number 6, we have the Comet Chronograph. Now, I looked at a number of Kickstarters last year, and when I look back, this is always one that comes to mind, as it was really the first one that I hoped and really wanted to do well, but didn't. Luckily, I was able to keep the prototype, so I can still enjoy it, but I really do hope that they come back around again and just give it another go, either with this model or maybe something new. Now, regardless of what you think about quartz, this is one of the best dials I've ever run across. The attention to detail and the finish they put on the hands and the dial, as well as just the application of color here to that dial, is simply phenomenal. These up-close shots are really just beautiful to look at, and without a doubt, the macro footage I have of this watch is my favorite to date. However, my second favorite set of macro footage is where number 5 comes in, and that's the Phoibos Great Wall. And it really shouldn't surprise anyone that there's a Phoibos on this list. But I did have a hard time picking between this and the Bronze Eagle Ray. Both of them are really great watches, but just from the sheer uniqueness or maybe oddness, the Great Wall just truly stands apart from pretty much everything. I've said it multiple times, but I will say it again, that the design choices they made here are not for everyone. But for me, this is really a watch that just outmonsters the monsters, and has actually pretty much killed any desire I had to get a real monster. But what I really love about it isn't that it's just a fun and funky watch, but that it's an extremely well-made fun and funky watch, with specs and just attention to detail that you really wouldn't normally expect. For a lot of people, if they're going to look at getting a Phoibos, the Wavemaster and the Eagle Ray are really going to be their best choices, not to mention probably more versatile ones. But for me, if I could only have one Phoibos, it would be the Great Wall. Number 4 is another Kickstarter watch, and that's the Vario Empire, which also happens to be another one of my favorites when it comes to macro footage, which is a beautiful 38mm Art Deco inspired dress watch, with just a great attention to the details of the case and the dial. And really, it's just beautiful and mesmerizing to look at. All 4 variants are simply stunning, but I happened to get a look at the silver mechanical one when they did their Kickstarter. The Empire also has my favorite handset to date. Not only does it have this beautiful dark blue finish, but I just love the skeletonized shape and design of them, especially that minute hand, which really looks like it could be the spire of a skyscraper. This is a watch I really loved when I looked at it, and was pretty tempted to get, but I kind of talked myself out of the Kickstarter at the last minute. Yet, it was always on my mind and I kind of regretted it. Now, months later, production was complete and a new set of reviews started to come out, and I just happened to catch one by Bear Cave Reviews. But seeing it again just really re-sparked that interest, so I went out and bought a white dial automatic version, and that's the one I have here. And since I've had it, it's really become my go-to dress watch. Although it does have some new competition that I got late last month, and it's actually from another Vario. Now, I don't want to deviate too much about this particular one, but it's a blue tanzanite version of their Eclipse Mechanical. But what's really special about this one is that there are only 2 of these ever made. Now, I put up a post in the community tab about why I have it, and I'll have a link there for anyone who's curious. It's one of those watches that's just kind of hard to capture on film, but simply stunning in person. And let me know if you'd like to see more of this or the Empire down below. At number 3, we have what I think is the most versatile watch in my collection, and that's the Champagne Dial Hamilton Khaki King. Now, the black dial version of this watch might be more popular, but I got no regrets about getting this one. Technically, it's a field watch, but it's a damn good looking field watch. In the last 2 or 3 trips I've gone on, this watch has come with me, just because it can really pull double duty. It looks great in almost any casual situation, and just looks perfectly at ease when dressed up to a nice dinner. I know some would prefer the older version with the high beat movement, but I've actually come to like the 80-hour power reserve on this one, and it does come in handy. The hardest part about this watch is really just finding the right strap to go with it, and I've found a few, but the main one I've settled on is really this cool 2-tone leather number. Alright, getting down to it. At number 2, we have a watch that I reviewed almost a year ago, and it's become my favorite Orient since then, and that's the Burgundy Orient Kamasu. This is another watch that I just really come back to time and time again. I just simply love it and can't really say enough good things about it. As well as I think it's an obvious upgrade from the Mako and Rays, as this does have sapphire and what I think is a better bezel. Orient does have some more conservative versions that are just the standard black and blue, but this dark red is easily my favorite. I just love this striking dial with those just slightly aggressive angled indices, which I think pairs nicely with this black bezel as well as just a whole variety of straps. This color might not be your first choice, as you might think it's too daring, but I'd say give it a shot, you might love it as well. Not to mention it does have some really good lume, maybe only second to the Triton for the Orient family, which I did show off in that Orient lume off video. Before we get to the last watch, I do want to talk about an honorable mention, or maybe dishonorable depending on your point of view, and that's the Ginault Ocean Rover. And this is less about the watch, which I actually do like, and more about the shit show that started about a month after I reviewed it. Now remember, I said this was about the watches that left the biggest impression. I didn't say they had to be positive. Some of you know what I'm talking about and some don't, so I'm going to keep this real short. Basically, in the background with Ginault, there's always been some rumors and allegations, and they've always been kind of unfounded and usually from the Rolex faithful. And to be fair, they pretty much threw these allegations at anything that looked like they're precious. But this time, about a month after I did the review, something different happened. An anonymous author who went by the name Deep Dweller posted a rather lengthy expose online, and this brought a lot of those rumors back to the surface. Except here, he actually supported it with some interesting details and facts. Now, he did jump to maybe some conclusions, but a lot of it was pretty compelling. And this by itself really wasn't the issue, although he did drag some people into this who probably didn't need to. The bigger problem came from the people that read it, or at least part of it. It was rather long, and a lot of people maybe started but didn't get all the way through, and then just kind of jumped to their own conclusions, which then pretty much spread like wildfire. The end result was kind of this really small but really vocal virtual mob that started going after anything that had to do with Ginault. But each reviewer kind of approached this in their own fashion, and I never really talked about it, and I thought about doing a video, but I kind of realized that until I'd actually really looked into this and really kind of investigated it for myself, I really didn't have anything of value to add, and I really didn't want to just jump on some sort of controversy for my own personal gain. But behind the scenes, I actually spent a lot of time dealing with this, and it wasn't all bad. I had some interesting conversations with people and might have even gained a few subscribers just from acting like a reasonable human being. But as I said, it was rather time consuming, and I'd probably have another 2 or 3 videos done by now if it wasn't for this. And it wasn't all just talking to random people. I was actually emailing back and forth with the author, Deep Dweller, after he tracked me down, as well as just kind of thinking about how do I handle these sort of situations in the future. In the end, this all kind of wound up being, sound and fury, signifying nothing, because everyone's kind of calmed down and nothing's really changed. Yet when I look back on this last year, this was definitely one of the more memorable impressions I had. Out of the 60 watches I looked at last year, there's one that not only left the biggest impression, but is also my favorite watch of the year. And unfortunately, it's a watch you can't buy, and that's the Akura Wayfarer. This was another Kickstarter that didn't really go through, but it didn't actually fail either. For a variety of reasons, the brand owner Philip just decided to pull the plug halfway through, even after it had passed its fundraising goal. I never actually reviewed it, but I did get to spend a lot of time with a prototype, and I even put a video out about what happened to it. For a lot of reasons, this is a watch that really spoke to me. It's a great size, fits perfectly, and I just really love this detailed, unique dial. I'd actually joined the Kickstarter beforehand, and when I heard it was canceled, was pretty disappointed. So I actually reached out to Philip and offered to buy that gray prototype I was looking at, yet someone actually beat me to it. And that's about how that last video ended. Yet that wasn't the end of the story. And about a month later, Philip reached out to me and told me he had a red one he was willing to sell me, and I jumped on it. And this red one really just seems to take everything I liked about the gray one and just kind of turns that dial up to 11. It just creates this very stunning and unique look you really can't find anywhere. I believe that this is a 3rd gen prototype, and only 2 of each colorway was ever made. And I think Philip is holding on to 1 of each of those colors just in case he decides to do something in the future. Which means there are only 5 of these in the wild, 1 of each color. And I happen to know that 3 of them are with reviewers, this one included. And I think that right there should really tell you something, that those of us that got a chance to see it beforehand rushed to go get one once we heard it was going to be canceled. Which I hope encourages Philip and Akura just to give it another go sometime in the future, so that others can enjoy the Wayfarer as well. Anyway, that's my top 10 watches for 2019. And let me know in a comment what you think about these, and if any of them particularly resonated with you, as well as if you'd like to see more of those hard to get watches, like the Wayfarer or the Eclipse. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for joining me.